Hey, how you doing?
Get my hands full, man. I want to be attorney.
I guess there was a surprise there. A heavier sentence was on the actual plea petition, but then when it got down to it, just 5 years recommended from the victim's family.
Yeah, Friday afternoon, we had agreed with the defense attorney to a recommendation of 15 years, 8 suspended, 7 served. Over the weekend, we were contacted by the victim's family through their attorney, and then we also talked with them by phone. They said that after mulling over it, after thinking about it, that they felt like that the sentence was too severe. One of the few cases in which we have victims' family who are requesting for a lower sentence. Throughout this entire process and proceeding, our whole purpose has tried to be to make the victims feel like that they've been properly served by the criminal justice system. And while we're not bound by the wishes of the victim, we routinely take that into consideration, especially in this type of case where we have victims who are have been sexually assaulted. It is very common for us to try to take into consideration their wishes. That's what we did today. The attorney who represented the victim and the victim's family spoke today. I wanted that to be clear to the court that what we were doing we were trying to make sure that their wishes were fulfilled, and that is what happened as a result of the plea bargain today. The plea bargain calls for him to serve 15 years, or both Mr. and Ms. Porter, both to serve 15 years in the custody of the Department of Correction. The last 10 years of that would be suspended. They would serve 5 years of that sentence. Of that 5 years, they would have to serve that sentence day for day without the possibility of parole or any early release. Following their release from custody, they will be placed on probation, and during that 5 years of probation, they will be electronically monitored, and they will also have to register both of them as sex offenders. So we were able to accomplish what the victim and the victim's family wanted by the pleas of guilty today.
But this looks like basically a slap on the wrist. They could have got 30 years in prison. They're walking away with 5 years.
Well, you're exactly right. They could have gotten a much stiffer sentence. But part of the thing that the family was trying to weigh is, do we want our child to have to come in and testify as to what has happened to her? These are very personal things that happen. When you talk about having to put a young 14, 15-year-old victim on the stand and talk about those types of things, families are often reluctant to do that. They're reluctant because they know that their loved one will be subject to cross-examination. They're reluctant because they know that the media will be there in the courtroom and be covering this. And the parents of this child are trying to get their child on with their life. The child has had to change schools. The child's life has been very adversely affected by what has happened. And in talking to the family, those are things that we routinely talk through. We cannot try the case without a victim. There's no way we can proceed to trial without putting the victim on the stand. In this case, for sure once, possibly twice, if they had moved to sever these trials. And the family did not want to go through that. And so during the course of all this, the family has routinely told us that we want convictions, we want them to register sex offender, we want them to go to prison. And we tried to then get down to what is an adequate sentence. How many years do they need to serve that you think would make you happy, would satisfy you? I believe that 7 years was a reasonable plea offer based upon everything that was involved in this case. I believe that would have been in line with some of the other plea bargains that we have recommended. But I also did want to take into consideration the wishes of the family. And if that's what the family wished, and if the family knew that by them taking 5 years that their daughter would not have to be subject to possibly 2 trials, subject to cross-examination, subject to this event being replayed in the media, then I'm going to err on the side of the family's wishes every time.
But you could have started with a higher number than 7 years and then worked your way down, because it sounds like they're getting a pretty good deal compared to other people in a similar situation.
Well, and we, and Ross, I tell you, 7 years was not the first offer. The first offer was higher than that. throughout the entire process. We consulted with the family to try to take into consideration their wishes. And at the end of the day, as you saw here, as their attorney spoke here in open court, they understood that that was not the wishes of the district attorney's office, but that was what they wanted to offer in this case. And by making that offer and by them accepting that, then they had assurances that these individuals would not go to trial. And even though the plea was filed Friday at 5 o'clock for a 7-year sentence, there was nothing that would have prevented them from still moving for trial. And so we did this because they asked us to do this. It is still 5 years, which they'll have to serve in their entirety. Would I have liked to have seen a higher sentence? Yes, I think everyone would have liked to have seen a higher sentence. But I was not willing to go against the wishes of my victim and the victim's family.
I understand that the circumstances are unique in this case, but what do you think will be the public's reaction to this?
These cases, when you're dealing with children and having to put children on the stand, I think some parents will understand that this resolution was reached without having the victim be required to testify. I think there'll be other people out there who will say that these defendants should have received a more severe sentence. And what my job is, and what the job of our office, law enforcement, is to try to craft what we believe is going to be a reasonable sentence. I would have liked to have seen more time, but I also have told the victims repeatedly throughout this process, I want to first and foremost see that you are happy, that whatever the ultimate outcome of this case is, that you're satisfied with the way the case has proceeded through the justice system. You're satisfied with the DA's office. You're satisfied with the Richmond Police Department. And the sentence that we reached today does, in fact, satisfy the victim on all those fronts.
Isn't getting parents to proceed in these cases a problem in most child molesting prosecutions?
I think in all cases against children, parents are very reluctant to have to put their children back on the stand and make them have to relive those events. They're reluctant to have their child subject to cross-examination. That was one reason that there was only a single case that was indicted in this particular incident, because the family did not want to continue to put their daughter through all that she's been through over these last several months. And so, I want to make sure that justice is served, and if justice is served by the family being happy, by these individuals going to prison, coming out on house arrest, and being required to register a sex offense, if the victim's family is satisfied and law enforcement is satisfied, I felt that was all we needed to do in this case.
They're in custody, right?
They have been taken into custody. They'll be transported to the Madison County Jail. From there, they'll be subject to be picked up by the Department of Corrections within the next 30 days, and they will then be housed wherever MDOC sees fit.
We understand Ms. Porter is pregnant, right?
She was pregnant at the time of her arrest. She has since had the child, and so...
That's just going to have to work that out with the family.
Yeah, as far as who's going to be taking care of the child, that's something...
Y'all didn't get into any of that.
No, they had family members. It's not a case in which the child would be subject to DHS custody, but that child will be taken care of by family members for the next 5 years.
You think that was part of the victim's family's thought process?
David, I do. I know in some of the conversations we had with the victim's mother, the victim's mother stated to my office that it was going to be difficult for her to take this lady, Miss Porter, away from her newborn child. And basically we told the victim's family that, there had to be a price that was paid for the crime that they committed. And while that may be one factor for them to take into consideration, a bigger factor is, what do we need to do to make sure that their daughter and that the perpetrators of their daughter are punished for the crime that occurred.
Thank you.
All right, gentlemen, good to see y'all as always.